Welcome to Real People, No Mask Required. You'll learn about real people facing real life experiences with your host, Liz Younger, licensed clinical social worker.
Hello, my name is Liz Younger, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have been in the field since 1988, and I want to welcome you to Real People, No Mask Required. This is a webinar series about talking to real people about their authentic experience. And it is my pleasure today to introduce Jose Rosado. He was the former mayor of Fountain Hill. He is the director of Upward Bound program at Kutztown University. He is an educator, author, consultant, and speaker. And he's also the vice president of Alianza Latina, a political action committee. So welcome, Jose, and how are you today?
I'm well, Liz. Thank you for having me.
Sure, no, I'm excited. We used to hang out back in the day, and I was really excited that you were able to give me your time today.
Of course.
So, Jose, one of the things that I do know about you is that you once shared about your own life story and how it influenced your current professional goals. In fact, if I remember correctly, you wrote a book.
Yes.
What would you like to share about that?
Well, I happen to have a copy of the book here with me right now, titled Being Good at Being Bad. And one of the things I say is that I was really good at being bad. But, you know, how does one get to that point? How does one get to the point of, taking on that type of lifestyle, of being good at being bad lifestyle? And one of the things that I always try to make clear is that, I believe people are born good. I believe I was born, a good person. The people that I grew up with shared a lot of time with as a young boy and as an adolescent. We were good people. We were born good people. But I think that, the accumulation of trauma, especially as children and adolescents, really lead to, taking on this being good at being bad lifestyle.
When and how were you able to become able to reconcile, if you will, that part of your life and make that turnaround where you took that adversity and then switched it into a positive or strength that drove you forward?
Well, there were two key experiences in my life that kind of pushed me in a positive direction. And again, when we're talking about young people who are dealing with dysfunction and abuse in their household, they're dealing with dysfunction and abuse and crime and violence in their community. Where do these individuals seek refuge? So, I think we really have to rely on educators, mental health professionals, your counselors, your therapists, but also teachers, have to become more informed and more aware of what's going on. I started getting into poetry and doing some work there, to focus on trauma. And one of my poems is called, I Have a Mask for That. And we have to recognize that these students, when they're walking into our schools, and they're walking and talking and engaging in certain behaviors a certain way, that's just a mask. It's a mask to hide their pain. It's a mask to hide their sense of failure. It's a facade, and we've got to be able to look past that. I often say, if you walk into a neighborhood such as the neighborhood that I grew up in, and you go to the playground and you see a group of young kids playing, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and they're at one end of the playground, and they're enjoying life, the innocence of life. They're still full of it. They're enjoying it. You see the smiles. And you pull up to any one of those kids and you ask, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? Those kids are going to tell you doctor, lawyer, teacher, veterinarian, astronaut. I mean, hopes, dreams, goals, and aspirations for sure. But now you walk to the other end of that same playground, and now you're engaging, adolescents, age 14, 15, 16, 17, and you ask them, hey, where do you think you're going to be 5 years from now? You're going to get a totally different response. Some of them might say, hey, look at, I might be dead. I might be in jail. Some of them might say, hey, I don't care to be alive 5 years from now. I don't know if I'll be alive. I don't care, to be alive. Because they're dealing with so much anger, they're dealing with so much pain. And what I challenge people to do is, to ask yourself, what happened? What are the life experiences that these people have had, between the ages of 4, 5, and 6, when they're happy little children, and now 14, 15, 16, where they've transformed into angry teenagers. And what I say is, life has happened. Trauma has taken place, and they've been traumatized in their homes. They've dealt with trauma in their community. So now, when you walk into an elementary school and you see these young people in the elementary school, they're engaged. They're engaged with their teachers. They're doing well. They have hopes, dreams, goals, and aspirations. Now you walk across the street to the middle school or the high school, and that same group of students, that same demographics of kids coming from the same neighborhood, now have a different outlook on life. And the teachers at that secondary level, middle and high school, many of them, haven't been trained. They don't know how to interact with these young folks. Throughout my career, I would hear teachers say, "Well, I'm a math teacher. I'm a science teacher." No, we're teachers. We're educators. We're educating young people, and we know that these young people are going to be walking in our classroom presenting challenges. And I was that kid. And when I got to high school, and I was, presenting certain behaviors, I recall, how certain teachers responded to that. And I can tell right away which teachers, really cared and wanted to make a difference, which teachers really didn't care and were just going to be very indifferent to you. And, other teachers that were just, hey, look at really didn't take a position either way. But for those teachers that were really unsupportive, and they would respond a certain way by saying certain things or doing certain things, they were, in many cases, just adding further trauma. Because here I am. Yes, I understand that, I'm presenting, behaviors that might not necessarily be the most appropriate, but that's coming from a position of anger. It's coming from a position of failure. It's coming from a position of pain. And, if you're going to respond by, telling me that I have no value, then I'm just going to, write you off. And you're not going to be able to have an impact in my life.
Jose, I just wanted to know, when did your life turn around? When were you able to kind of recognize these patterns in your life, and how did you get them to turn around? Did you get support? Did you just have that, chutzpah about you? How did that happen?
Well, again, getting back to those two moments in my life, and that's what I was trying to kind of just laying the foundation for how you get there. And what I'm saying is that education has made a difference in my life without a doubt. But I went from being a student in general ed courses, general ed curriculum at Freedom High School, not feeling comfortable at the school, not wanting to be there, not academically challenged. My attendance was horrible. But, most of my teachers were either indifferent and some were just very hurtful in some of the comments that they would make. But there were a few, and one such teacher was Mrs. Dornblazer, a photography teacher, who could not understand where I was coming from. I think, she would look at the pictures that I took and the pictures that I would present during critiques in photography coming from, and she could see some of the pain and what have you. But she also recognized, that I was a good person and that I had some potential. So she would often, make positive comments and, would make some encouraging comments to me. And, I just kind of put those things, in the back of my mind, just, planting a seed, dropping that in the bank. But, as I recall this, for every one or two positive comments that I got from a Mrs. Dornblazer or someone else, the messages and the comments and the feedback that I was getting from others were usually pretty negative. So, there was no balance there. But there came a point in my life, I was 18 years old.
Mhm.
I graduated high school. I graduated because, mom, said, hey, I really believe you need to graduate from school. And although she only had a first grade education herself in Puerto Rico, she believed that an education can make a difference. So
Mhm.
even though I was, living in the projects and, dealing with so much dysfunction at home and what have you, got through school. But when I graduated from high school, I thought to myself, that's it. Got a high school diploma. Life's going to be different now. I was working at a fast food restaurant, making 15 cents over minimum wage and driving a beat up car. And I thought to myself, hey, I'm not dealing drugs. I'm not in jail. I'm still alive. Life is pretty good. But, and I would have been content to continue along that path, I guess. But fortunately for me, it was a teacher, a friend of the family, the person that eventually became my mentor, Edie Cintrón, who one day was driving through the housing projects about 3:30 in the afternoon. I had gotten home from work and I was sitting under a tree drinking a quart of beer. And she pulls up and she says, hey, I know you graduated from high school. She knew my family. And she said, no, you graduated from high school. What are you doing with yourself? And I, just shared with her what I just shared with you. And she said, well, hey, have you ever thought about going to college? Now, I was out of high school for a year already. She said, well, you ever thought about going to college? And I thought to myself, this lady is crazy. College, not me. I mean, I was told many times, throughout my high school career, directly and indirectly, by many teachers that I was not college material. So the thought of that just scared the heck out of me. I just didn't think that, that was something that was realistic for me. But, she kept talking and said, hey, look at, that question about, hey, if you could be anything that you want in life, what would you like to be? So I thought to myself, well, let me just play this game with her because my beer's getting warm and I just want to get back to drinking. So I said to her, look, if I could be anything that I wanted to be, I'd like to be a juvenile probation officer because I want to work with troubled youth. I mean, I grew up in an environment where, a lot of my friends, and as I said earlier, good people, people that I went to elementary school with, played Little League Baseball with, Boys and Girls Club, good people that eventually got into, drugs, addiction, crime, and violence. And I thought to myself, I'd like to be able to work with, individuals like that. So she talked to me about the criminal justice program at East Stroudsburg University. I said, yeah, you go to East Stroudsburg University, major in criminal justice administration, and become a probation officer. And I thought to myself, again, she's nuts. But, she said, hey, I can come back tomorrow, do the college application, financial aid form. You graduated a year ago, you haven't taken an SAT, you'd have to go to a summer remedial program, to get in. And at that moment, I thought to myself, what do I have to lose, really? I mean, what is it that I have to lose? Why not? Why not, give this a shot? And true to her word, she was back the next day. We started to do the forms. And a few weeks later, I found myself on the campus of East Stroudsburg University in the Act 101 summer program, working toward, admission in the fall. So yes, that was a turning point. And what I say about Edie at that time was that she believed in me at a time when I didn't believe in myself, at a time where I had nothing but doubt, nothing but fear in my life. She believed in me. And, it was a difficult step for me to take. And I think, I had to overcome, the way that I was, thinking about things. And the one thought that scared me the most was that, if I allow myself to pursue this and I go off to college, if I try and don't succeed, where is it that I have to go after that? Where do I go? I'll have to come back to the projects, as that Puerto Rican who thought that, he could make it as a schoolboy, as a college boy. And that scared me.
So did you have any, and I'm not sure if I got the name right, Edie Cintrón?
Yes, Edie.
Okay, Edith, sorry. Did you have any other sort of counseling support, or was just like, I I have so much fear about failing and having to return to what I walked away from. Like, what do you think gave you that strength?
Well, there was no other, additional person, in terms of a counselor or a mentor. It was just Edie's. But, a few years before that, I had gotten involved in amateur boxing. I mean, I was my own worst enemy. I got into substance abuse at a very early age. I found myself fighting and getting into trouble on the streets repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
And constantly fighting because I was just that angry. And fortunately for me, one day it happened at the Christmas City Fair in Bethlehem. I was involved in yet another fight. And fortunately for me, this individual literally pulled me out of the fight. His name was Angel, and he knew me from the projects. And he was a professional boxer. And he challenged me. He says, "Hey, you think you're a tough guy? You're out here fighting and what have you. If you're really a tough guy, maybe you ought to stop by the gym, and see what you got." So he introduced me to amateur boxing at the age of 15. And the structure and the discipline that I got from amateur boxing really helped to turn me around. I mean, I was clean. I was, focused. I was, leading a good life. I had a goal, and pursuing boxing and doing well in amateur boxing was that goal. So I did very well there. And again, I acquired a certain discipline, a self-discipline, which was very, very helpful. Being sober, being clean was also something that, contributed to me, wanting to pursue a more constructive and positive lifestyle. So I did that for the better part of 2 years, but then unfortunately I had a serious knee injury. I tore my knee through training, and it required surgery. And that's where again, I met this challenge of dealing with addiction. I tell people I went into the hospital as a very well-conditioned athlete with an injury. And I was in the hospital for a week, because of my surgery. And I came out, just eager to get high again. So, addiction, reintroduced itself or represented itself, in my life. And, it's difficult because growing up in a household with an alcoholic father, I knew, all of the destruction that came along with that. And I always told myself that, I'm not going to be my father when I grow up. But those of us that understand addiction know that, oftentimes those patterns just, recycle and represent themselves. So, there I was again, dealing with addiction, coming out of the hospital after that knee surgery. But, at that moment that Edie's is talking to me about going to college, I had to draw on whatever positives I had, to get me to the point where I could say to myself, I think I can do this. I'm going to allow myself to do this. And, what were those few positives, in my life up until that point? It was Mrs. Doran Blazer and, some of the comments that she made.
So personally, what was your experience of the pandemic and the quarantine? Like, what did you find in yourself trying to cope and manage?
Well, I think, I look toward leadership, being someone who's educated and, having been involved in the political process as an elected official, looking to see, what direction our leadership is providing, looking at data and wanting to get some answers and some direction. Obviously, this is all new to us in regards to, this type of pandemic. So what are the facts? And I was just troubled by the fact that, a lot of information was being misrepresented, or the fact that, people were responding more in regards to certain desires or agendas that they had, as opposed to, dealing with factual information, scientific information. And I think that had a more detrimental impact on the communities of color. Again, because when you're talking about your essential workers, obviously you have your first responders, police, fire, and those individuals. But when you look at low-income populations, we're more likely to be your warehouse workers. We're more likely to be the folks that do the housekeeping, the cleaning, in the hospitals, and those types of places. Your bus drivers, your truck drivers. So, as the nation went into a lockdown, I think a little later than it should have, many people in these minority communities didn't have that option to stay home, because again, they had to make sure that the hospitals were being cleaned, other buildings were being kept clean, and that the deliveries were being made. The warehouse workers, going in to make sure that your Amazon order, doesn't get delayed. So I think that all this pandemic did was to, again, expose the inequities, and to expose how many people of color, people that are less educated, are oftentimes put in situations where they put their well-being in harm's way.
Right. And so did you notice any escalation? Like, certainly it's widely known that we were seeing a real spike in calls to suicide hotlines, as well as completed suicides. And did you notice any of that in the community?
I've heard, from friends, family members, and colleagues. Obviously, yes, numbers going up. The fact that you go into a lockdown, and now again, going back to my childhood experiences and living in a household with an alcoholic father and dealing with abuse. Now, you go into lockdown. There's no refuge. You're not leaving your house in the morning to go to school. The adult abuser isn't leaving to go to work. So you don't have that time of refuge. So yes, I know that there was a spike in abuse cases, physical, mental abuse, domestic violence. Yes, and I was not surprised by that, again, based on my own personal and professional experiences, and understanding that, when you create that situation, or when you're presented with that type of situation, and now, you're ordered to stay in place, that's certainly going to create more stress to an already stressful environment, and it's going to increase the likelihood that individuals are going to face trauma.
So when the riots happened, what do you think the impact was in your community, or in, what was your observation of what was happening?
Well, there was a lot of outrage because people could actually see this happening right in front of you on television, with the officer with his knee on George Floyd's neck. And I think that just led to a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, and just really put things very clearly into perspective. For a lot of people like myself, I had my share of run-ins with police, as an adolescent. I saw, friends and family members, be abused, physically abused by police. So I've seen a lot of that, the injustice. But what we saw, happen, right in front of us on television was just nothing less than a public execution, and methodically over 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And to just think about that, and how, this officer just devalued human life. And was it because of a $20, counterfeit bill, or was it because of the fact that George Floyd was Black?
Well, I just didn't know. I mean, did it seem out of proportion? And, and I'm not saying it was, just, there's been speculation that because of the pandemic and people feeling so helpless and isolated, that there was just this, surge, if you will. And it gave a point for people to rally around.
I don't believe that necessarily. I think had we not been in a pandemic, and we witnessed what we witnessed in that video, I still believe that the response that we saw with the protest would have continued, or would have definitely taken place. I don't know that the pandemic in any way would have contributed more to the outrage. I know that I was not more outraged by what I saw because we happened to be in the middle of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I was outraged because what I saw was just, a complete indifference to human life.
So one of the things I've been hearing from you throughout this, because, you've obviously dealt with some of your demons. And, I was listening, and one of the things I always hear actually when I speak with you is, the idea, and I completely am on board with this, by the way, of like trying to empower people, and hence your involvement in Alianza Latina, right? To give that empowerment to that community so that they are a part, an integral part, a constructive part of our political process. The idea that you are going out and speaking and trying to educate people about trauma-informed education and care, right? Your involvement in Upward Bound. So, that whole concept of like developing competency in order to get people to feel empowered. The second part I heard from you also is you really spent a bit of time educating yourself about what factors you could bring to help others. You used them on yourself, but then you went out and gave them to others. So that I thought was really great, like kind of taking your own experience, you're, looking in, researching, educating yourself, and then taking it out into the community and saying, here are the things that I have learned will help you and lift your boats out of the water, shall we say. Mm-hmm. And your use of self, period. You have been out there always out front, calling things out, speaking out loudly. And, you don't take any prisoners, I guess. You just kind of call it as you see it, to let people know that they too can raise those concerns, can raise those complaints. Does that sound right?
Yes, I think you kind of wrapped that up pretty well. But again, I think it's, dealing with people with where they happen to be at that particular moment. And again, many of our young people are dealing with so much trauma. They've reached a point where, they've taken on that being good at being bad lifestyle, those self-limiting behaviors that they engage in and what have you. And, step one for me is to try to help that individual heal. Help that individual recognize that that they're a good person, that that they have many good qualities, and that they have to understand that some of these situations that they dealt with, but then really engage in healing. And the other thing is creating opportunities. And I think that that's very, very important. Edie's created an opportunity for me. And throughout my life, personally and professionally, there were other opportunities that were presented for me that I was able to, pursue and take advantage of.
Right, and trying to give students an opportunity to be successful in putting them in place or situations where they could be successful, right? Yeah. Instead of like, again, as you pointed out earlier in the interview, of like always making them feel like failures. And I can remember doing a group at Northeast Middle School, and there was a Swedish young boy, I never forgot it. And at that time, what was it, 1998, I'm thinking, and the young man was being picked on, and he fought back. And I, of course, was promoting nonviolence, and he goes, "You don't live in the neighborhood if you don't do this," right? Today, I swear to you, I mean, it breaks my heart. I hope that young man got where he needed to go, but that was a very, very sad statement that stuck with me after all these years.
Well, one of the things I say about young people, especially, young people, that come from those types of environments, that particular subculture, and I'm sure, or I would think that young individual was living in the Pembroke Marvine housing projects, and I lived there myself for some time. Actually, the experience that I had with Edie's, with the drinking of the beer under the tree, that took place in the Pembroke housing projects.
I recognized it. I heard it when you said it. I've worked the village. I have, man. Yeah.
But one of the things that I often say is that, status and recognition is important to these young people. Status and recognition is just as important to them as it is to anyone else, politician, corporate executive, what have you. And if they're not going to be recognized for being a very good student or a gifted athlete, a talented artist or dancer, if I'm not going to get recognition from those things that are positive, then I'm going to get recognition for, this here, being good at being bad. I'm going to be the best drug dealer, the best gangbanger, the class clown, whatever it is, because that's what gives me status, that's what gives me recognition, and I'm going to be the best at it that I can be. And for a lot of our young people coming from those environments, and I think it goes to what, you shared that young boy said to you, there is that expectation, that subculture presents certain expectations, and there are certain behaviors that give you a certain level of status and recognition. We've all heard the term street cred, and very, very important to these young people because, this is my environment. This is where I live. This is where I'm from. So I have to have a certain status. I have to have a certain reputation, in this particular community. And that's very, very important to them. And oftentimes, again, that status or that reputation comes from, engaging in self-limiting, oftentimes antisocial or illegal behaviors.
Yeah, no. I mean, like I said, I could cry this moment. He was just this really sweet young man, and to see him in that position to defend himself, and he obviously was not a street tough, and yeah, it breaks my heart to this day. I can still hear him, sitting at that table and looking up at me, and I was like, oh, goodness gracious, I would take on the battles for you, my friend. So Jose, you have a website where people can go and see some of your projects that you've done related to trauma. Do you want to share that information?
Yeah, the website is joserosado.org. And on the website, I list out the different types of workshops and presentations that I provide. Also, outlining all of the different issues that I speak on. I do staff development, faculty development types of programs, motivational types of programs as well. I'm talking on many different issues.
Your raw honesty, the idea that, your testimony right now was so emotional and so meaningful. And I really hope that the individuals who watch this, feel the reach out that you're doing for them. Again, hopefully somebody that's watching this will hear their story and they won't feel so isolated, and they will be given that courage to reach out like you did to Edie's, right? So I really want to thank you. This was compelling for me. You are a courageous person to share the way you did and to continue to go out there and fight the fight, not only for yourself, but for the people that you feel you represent.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Liz. I do appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Real People, No Mask Required. Real stories, real life events, real people. For more information, visit lizyounger.com. That's lizyounger.com.